from the vault, high atop the pastoral center of the Diocese of Camden, you're listening to Talking Catholic.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Talking Catholic. It's good to be here today. I'm Kari, Janisse, one of your hosts, and I'm here with my co-host, Mike Walsh.
Hey, Kari, how are you?
I'm doing well, thanks. How are you?
I'm great, and you're only recently back from Italy, right?
Yes, I actually think I'm finally over the jet lag. So I heard once that it takes, for every hour you're behind, it takes a day to come back. So I'm back just about a week now, so I'm recovered.
But yours wasn't just a typical vacation to Italy. You actually, it was sort of a personal pilgrimage, right?
Yes, that's correct. So it was not a vacation. I would definitely call it a pilgrimage because pilgrimages are tough, and this was tough.
Oh, no.
But it's only because we took a 2-year-old with us to Italy. So a 7-hour flight there, a 9-hour flight back. Oof. With a 2-year-old, multiple train rides. Although he loves choo-choos and airplanes, so that was great. But it was a little difficult task, but well worth it spiritually, and that's also part of a pilgrimage, is the spiritual, what it does to your soul, what it does to you. And so I'm all charged up from the faith. I'm freshly coming off of, not that we need these recharges, but Jesus himself retreated. Jesus himself did things to pull away and to just pull away and immerse ourselves in the faith. I
agree with you. I think we do need those recharges.
Yeah, I guess we do.
I think they're important.
It is true. Well, I guess we need the recharges. I didn't need it to like solidify my faith.
There you go. That part's true.
Yeah. Like I my faith would be exactly where it's at, but it actually just charged me back up to want to do more, to share and evangelize. So the reason we were there was a personal intention for my husband and I. We had, to make a very long story short, which could be its own probably podcast, we had a long struggle with infertility, about 10 years, the first 10 years of our marriage, trying to conceive. And we prayed to a lot of different saints, especially the main go-to, Saint Gerard Majella, who is well known for helping women conceive, and a few other saints along the way, Saint Gianna, and a few others who are known for that. And someone gave us some advice to pray to Saint Anthony of Padua, and we said, well, these other saints didn't get it done for us, so hey, we're willing to move on to another saint. Not that we ever left the other ones behind us. I still have a great devotion to Saint Gerard especially, but Saint Anthony of Padua was the one who we prayed this prayer. It was called Miraculous Prayer to Saint Anthony for causes that seem helpless, and that's really where we were at in that time. And this is at that point about 8 years into the infertility struggle. Yeah. So we prayed heavily to him, and during that time of prayer and that devotion and asking for his intercession was when our prayers were heard and we conceived. And we now have our son, John Paul Anthony, so named after St. Anthony and also after St. John Paul II, who has always been my husband and I's just number one. He's our number one saint. Like, we're big fans of his. So.
That's wonderful. So where did you go during your pilgrimage?
Yeah, so we wanted to give thanks to both of these saints. St. John Paul II, just for being so close to our hearts. We went to his canonization back in 2014, my husband and I, and I think at that moment we always knew if we were having a son, that name was solidified for his first name, and then for St. Anthony for his middle name. So St. John Paul II is in Rome, in the Vatican, St. Peter's Basilica. So right on the right-hand side, when you walk in, right after the Pietà, is St. John Paul II's tomb. So that was our first stop, was Rome. And we prayed there by his tomb in thanksgiving for our son. It was myself, my husband, and my son. And that was the first stop. And then... And
was that your first time having been there?
Fourth. That was our fourth. So his canonization, St. John Paul II's canonization, was the first time. Second time was I went to Mother Teresa's canonization in 2016. And then a priest of our diocese, Father Nevitt, his ordination to the diaconate was also held there. He was studying at the North American College at the time, so we went to that. And I was also pregnant at that time. So my son technically was there in the womb at the tomb, and we have a picture from that moment, but this was now, he was here with us after being born now. He's almost 2 years old, which was the other reason why we went, because he flew for free, being under 2 years old. So everybody out there, your child flies for free. He's on your lap, or she's on your lap, but it was another deciding factor as to when to do this pilgrimage. And then we moved on, traveled north from Rome to Turin, which we went to where St. John Bosco is in Turin, and also Blessed Pier Giorgio Frassati. We saw his tomb, and we saw the Shroud of Turin, where that is kept, and many other beautiful sites. The Alps in Turin, gorgeous to just view. We moved on from there to Padua, And in Padua, of course, was St. Anthony's tomb. Beautiful. The Basilica of St. Anthony's. It's just tremendously beautiful.
Yeah.
And then from there, we moved on to Venice to fly out because there's an airport in Venice. And St. Mark is also, the Cathedral of St. Mark is there as well. So we went there as well. And so several other actually saints along the way, their tombs, St. Luke's, St. Jacinta, or not just Jacinta, who's a patron saint of Turin, and many other saints. So it was cool. We really had a great time.
And you had a little stowaway too, right? Didn't you bring a seminarian with you or a transitional deacon with you?
We had somebody, yes. So the other deciding factor in the timing to go was Deacon Peter Gallagher, another seminarian for our diocese who's studying at the North American College. Currently, he's in his last year. He'll be ordained a priest, God willing, this June. He was on break. So they take their finals the beginning of February, and then they have a 2-week break. As long as they don't spread out their finals, they have an option to do that. But he got his all done, and he had a 2-week break. So the second week of his break, he spent with us traveling north from Rome. He met up with us the second day of Rome and continued on. So he was there on the train rides with us and everything else. So he stayed in the same cities that we stayed in. My husband and I stayed together, and he stayed in a separate location, but each morning we would meet up and travel on our ways. And he was very knowledgeable too, of course, of the language, which was a big help, but also very knowledgeable for him of just the different saints and what he knew about them in his studies, some of the different things he could point out to us. It was nice, like having your own personal tour guide with you.
I was actually thinking about that because you put him to work a couple of times too. You, for anyone who would like to see more of Kari's pilgrimage to Rome and the north of Italy, if you go to her YouTube page, her show YouTube page, Youth Ministry Insights, on either Facebook or Instagram, you'll actually see a lot of the videos from her trip, and they're outstanding. And your husband, by the way, was delightful in all the ones you had.
Oh, that's great to hear.
He was really cute, or he was really good. And then your son was very cute. He was almost on point every single time.
Yes.
He went sideways a couple of times.
Yeah, and you hear him in the background of some of the ones as well. He might not be pictured there, but you hear him sometimes.
But it was really great. It was for me, sort of being able to watch from afar, who has never been to Italy in any capacity. So I get a lot out of seeing other people's travel logs when they travel like that. So it was like I was a little bit there with you and seeing these moments in your life, and you're very open about a lot of the trials and tribulations you've been through, particularly when it came to motherhood. It was really touching to see just how moved you really were being out there. Also, how in terms of your I'm a PR guy, your delivery was outstanding every place you went to. But your conversations with your husband and with Deacon Peter were really great and very informative. So I really appreciated that.
Well, thanks. Yeah, we when you travel like that, especially in the faith, and we call it a pilgrimage, using social media to be able to share that with others. In the past, when I've gone to Italy and other places, I'll post pictures, but this was the first time doing video for me. And I thought this is such a great opportunity to just evangelize to others and bring others, as you said, along with you that maybe don't get the opportunity to be at that exact place at any point in their life, but at least they could see the great beauty of it. And every time I go, like I said, it is a recharge because you feel, wow, like our faith is so rich, and like what we see here just in the States, or maybe where we just live in our little corner of wherever it is, New Jersey or wherever else you're living, there's so much more out there, and that's even more rich because we're a baby country. We haven't been around so long. With some of these basilicas built in the 1400s, 1500s, and you're thinking, man, there was no power tools back then. These people had real faith with their hands building these cathedrals. They're just immense and incredible. And that alone to me just speaks so much. But then to see some beautiful relics in Turin, in the one cathedral underneath, is just over 4,000 relics of saints and blesseds. And you're just like, wow, St. John Bosco incorrupt, to see his body. Yeah. It's incredible. So these moments of faith, they are really what truly just keep me so connected in so much depth to who I am. It really does help shape my faith in a really deep way, and to look back and see, wow, those 10 years for us, as difficult as they were, as I call them, they were my that was a big cross for me. And now we're in Easter Sunday forever with our son, and to look back and say, wow, we got to give thanks for both that cross and now what we have, and it's great. And then to see him running through the basilicas, and there was one of the fathers who was there. He was a Franciscan, so he had his oh gosh, I can't think of the word. Their rope where their cincture on. Excuse me, his cincture. And my son's there playing with it, pulling on his cincture, and he's just playing along with him. And I'm like, this is what this trip was all about. You know, it was great.
Yep, that's really wonderful. I genuinely, truly enjoyed it, and I hope people, if you haven't considered a pilgrimage of your own, whether you go with a big group, as actually the Bishop of Camden is on a big pilgrimage right now. We're recording this 2 days before Ash Wednesday. He's on a big pilgrimage right now to the Holy Land and to Assisi and Rome, along with about 56 members of the diocese. And actually, if you want to see those videos that are being hosted by one of our other YouTube hosts, Donna Ottaviano Britt, you can go to her Facebook page, Diocese of Camden, Office of Discipleship and Leadership, and see a lot of the travelogue she's put up. Actually, I think you inspired her, as a matter of fact. She told me fed up. She's like, how am I going to compete with Kari?
Oh, she's doing a phenomenal job.
She really is.
She surpassed me. I laid the groundwork, and now she's just running with it.
I got to admit, that was pretty nice. But the two of you together actually did an outstanding job. So if you've never been on a pilgrimage, like I've never been on a pilgrimage, I hope that you'll see what both Kari and what Donna and others have done very recently. And the people that I know that have been on pilgrimage have been really moved by them. It's just a great opportunity, and and as everyone says, and you kind of alluded to this at the very beginning, it's not a vacation. It's oftentimes very physically demanding. It doesn't necessarily have to be walking the Camino, but 500 miles. But it is still a lot of moving around, getting up early in the morning, and being out all day.
Yes.
Though if you go with our Vicar General, who runs a lot of pilgrimages in the diocese, he does make sure you're well fed. I've gotten lots of positive feedback about the food.
Listen, when you're traveling, you need to eat, because there's some really great food out there, especially in Italy. We had gelato every day, if not twice a day, which we loved.
And actually, on that point, we're going to transition to what our topic is today, where we're actually going to talk about Lent and the things that we're giving up things. So we've
more ice cream.
That's right. So we actually have a special guest with us today, a rarity. This will be the first time that a priest from my parish has appeared on any of my Talking Catholic shows, the podcast, the YouTube shows, anything like that. So we have with us the administrator of Saint Bridget's Parish in Glassboro, New Jersey, Father John Rossi. Thank you for being here, sir.
Thanks. Great to be here, Mike.
It's
good to be here with Kari, too.
Yeah, it's so glad to have you here.
Everybody likes to be here with Kari. Nobody cares about me. Everybody loves Kari. Matter of fact, when we talk about getting guests nowadays, I always go, Kari, you ask, because they'll say yes to you. You might say no to me. But you, in addition to being the administrator of the parish, something else that we've talked about quite a bit on this show is you also work with the Catholic Campus Ministry at Rowan University, which is a part of our parish. Our parish is a bit unique in that way. We're considered a university parish, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. And then so you have the university parish, you have the terrestrial parish, and then territorial parish, and then we also have a Hispanic ministry and Glassboro. So you sort of had to...
Father, you do a lot.
I'm the one priest there.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
Yes.
God bless you. Good work.
But I'll tell you, it's a very vibrant parish. And if I can say that in the past 6 months, I've noticed it's even become more vibrant. So I think people are really gravitating to
that's awesome.
Father John. That's really impressive. And I wanted to thank you as a parishioner for doing such a great job at the parish. And
thank you, Mike.
I'm a former parishioner of St. Bridget's and former youth minister there too. Great. So it warms my heart
I was
to hear all
thinking
that.
we met way back when you were in college at Rowan University.
At Rowan. So we're connected in a lot of ways.
I was a seminarian, and I was assigned to Father Maz to go once a week and visit the Newman Center.
Yes.
And that's where I met Kari.
That's exactly where.
Yeah.
Yeah, because we're pretty close in age. So you were going through seminary and I was in college.
Right.
I'm starting to think of you, Kari, as a seminarian whisperer. There seems to be a lot of connections with you and our seminarians. And all for the positive.
Exactly. Well, we need priests. So, hey, if I can help, I will help cultivate
You got that golden touch. So you keep doing it. So the topic for today is, since we are recording this 2 days before Ash Wednesday, is we want to talk about Lent. And this is something we do on our podcast on a regular basis when the seasons come around. We had Father Maz on to talk about Advent and late November. And we wanted to talk about Lent because what I've had to do in my own life, but I know this is often a hurdle for other Catholics, is I don't think we have this great gift of 7 weeks where we can prepare for the most important celebration on the Catholic calendar. But those 7 weeks, I always feel bad if somebody might waste them. Where
Sure.
they didn't take advantage of something, or worse yet, they don't understand the concept of Lent in general. So, Father, just sort of right out of the gate, what should Lent mean to us as Catholics?
Well, I think it was cool that we started out talking about Kari's journey, a pilgrimage, because that's one of my favorite images of the Lenten season. It's a journey with Christ into the wilderness. And if you remember in the Gospel, Jesus went for 40 days, 40 nights into the desert to be tempted by the evil one. And that's what we model our Lenten season on. We try to do what Christ did. He fasted, he prayed, he gave of himself. And this is the time for us as Catholics to participate in 40 days, a journey towards Easter, towards renewal, towards new life.
Yeah, it's so true. And we think about when Jesus did pray and fast, like I mentioned it earlier, like he retreated back, like how we each need that in our lives as well, to retreat back. In Lent, what are some of the ways that you would say we can do that? We can pull back, reflect, retreat in any way from the normal everyday life, the busyness, the craziness, the go, never have a minute to reflect, never have a minute to stop and think. Where can Lent bring us in that? What do you think?
Well, I think Lent is just typically a time of restraint, of pulling back from a lot of the noise that we have in everyday life so that we can reflect more on God and build our relationship with him, get to know ourselves better, and reach out in love to other people. So I think that the church has always proposed these three disciplines of fasting, prayer, and almsgiving. Mm-hmm. Fasting is denying ourselves, giving up some type of food or drink that we enjoy, but it could be other things as well. It doesn't just have to be something that we consume like food, but it could be giving up a favorite TV show, giving up listening to music, giving up a favorite internet app or social media, something that we enjoy doing, and using that time to refocus on God, recognize our hunger for God. And I think that's really a very important practice that even Christ modeled for us in his own lifetime.
Yeah, I see it very often on social media, especially Facebook. People, Ash Wednesday, put up the whole post, okay, see you guys in 40 days, or they put up the Lent going off Facebook for their profile picture, different things like that. I've seen it so much. You probably have too.
And I'm of two minds about that. Only because I obviously I don't have two minds of sacrifice. I'm of two minds about giving up social media. Maybe it's because I do PR for a living nowadays, but I get so much out of I know there's a cacophony of information and we're living in divisive times and sometimes a lot of stress and stuff like that, but I take great joy in seeing the successes of the people in my life. And because I have a very busy life, sometimes I can only communicate with people via social media, so I hate to give that part up. However,
I do that. I'm of that mindset too. I never give it up.
Yeah, I never give up social media.
I feel like it doesn't take over my life. It just adds a little joy to it.
Right. And I'm the same way.
But it's a balance, because there are people that are in balance, which is probably those ones that give it up.
But every year I have, and I don't want to make this just about, Lent is giving something up.
Right.
I know that's an important element of it, but it's in many ways a smaller element as opposed to all the other elements of Lent. But since we brought it up, I have been struggling with an idea of what to give up for Lent. And just listening to you talk, Father, I realized, I'm giving up Netflix because of late recently I have been spending way too much time binge watching on Netflix late at night, like 10 o'clock.
I should recommend this to my husband too.
No Netflix. Yeah. I think I'm going to give up Netflix. So thank you for giving me some guidance. It was like a moment of epiphany right there. I appreciate that.
Great.
So all joking aside, so giving things up as part of Lent is important.
Sure.
Now I've seen though sort of a counter argument to that, where we, as opposed to the sacrifice of giving up something Lent, there is the doing something instead. Sure. Kind of Lent. I mean, would that still work?
Right. That ties in with the other two disciplines of prayer and almsgiving. So when you think about prayer, the basic definition is lifting up our hearts to God. And we can always grow in prayer. Every priest, deacon, sister, layperson, married or single, all of us have room for improvement, I believe, in the prayer life. Yeah. We can always delve deeper. We could always try a new form of prayer and challenge ourselves to grow in our relationship with God. So I would really encourage people to try different forms of meditation, get into spiritual reading, pick up the Bible. I think a lot of people neglect reading the Gospels and getting to know who Jesus actually is through those stories of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John.
Yes.
And it's powerful when you really take some quiet time. Instead of watching a show on Netflix, go into the story of Jesus. Delve into that. Put yourself as a character in the story. Imagine it. And then meditation is taking from that, thinking, what does this mean for my life today? What am I going to do about it? So I really think prayer with the Bible is key and a great way to grow in our prayer life during the Lenten season.
Almost like a Lectio Divina, as you
Sure.
mentioned here, putting yourself into the story and imagining it.
Right. And now that's really the key to understanding other great prayers for Lent. For example, the Rosary. The Rosary is based on all biblical stories. And sometimes people just say the prayers, they get repetitive, but they don't think about the mysteries. They don't think about the actual stories of Jesus and Mary and what that means for their lives. So that might be a challenge. That if someone prays the Rosary already, are they really meditating on the mysteries?
Oh, that's a
That's,
good
a,
point.
that's a good point.
Right.
Wow.
I could take that one to heart myself
Yeah.
for sure. I fail at that sometimes.
And another great example of a biblical prayer is Stations of the Cross.
Oh, yes.
All of those, the 14 stations, are based on Jesus' journey to Calvary.
Yeah.
And we can take so much food for thought from that.
Right.
And it's very moving. There's been a lot of conversions through people who have participated in the way of the cross and realize how our sins put Jesus through that. And real repentance is saying, I'm so sorry, Lord, for doing this to you, and I want to avoid sin in the future. And, you know, it's so important to make a good confession during Lent, but I think Stations of the Cross is one of these meditations that really wakes people up.
Yeah, I know many parishes offer the stations on Friday night. Traditionally, they're prayed on Friday nights or even throughout the week. I know here it's at Friday night, so maybe does your parish offer it? Is it a Friday night thing?
We
for
are
you?
actually. We're going to do something a little bit different. We're going to have soup in stations. So we're going to have a Lenten soup at 6 o'clock, and then 7:15 we'll have Stations of the Cross, followed by benediction with the Blessed Sacrament.
beautiful.
And I'll hear confessions after that
Oh, that's great.
for as long as people are available.
that.
They need to go to confession.
Yeah, that's another thing that parishes also do is the soup in scripture or the soup in stations or different things. They offer a small meal and then something spiritual after. I know we have guest speakers for 3 weeks in a row giving like little talks on different topics of the faith. It's nice to see that increase. So we're, we want to go deeper. Okay, now the parishes are supplementing what we need to go deeper with something they're offering. So that's great that your parish, every parish does it a little differently, but it's great to hear great things going on.
And the fellowship aspect of that too, an opportunity where we get to come together, because oftentimes I feel like Lent, there's oftentimes a solitary feel to it. Like even the sacrifice, we tend to give these things up by ourselves. Or if we go to, one of my favorite things has always been going to adoration or holy hour or something like that, where it's usually just me sitting in a pew, just sort of meditating. But being able to come together as a group and remind us we're all in this together, like even particularly during these, let's face it, oftentimes Lent can be considered a trial. It can be a trial of the soul, a trial of whatever our spirituality, where we really start to look in on ourselves, and that can be troubling for some people. So knowing that you have other people to turn to, that's helpful.
Yeah, the community aspect is very important. Really.
I think really that's one of the keys to getting the most out of Lent, to see it as a whole community, the whole family of the church doing this together. That we don't just think it's all about us, but we gather together and we're on the journey together. And I think that's why we gather more frequently for prayer services and mass stations, all of that as a community, meals together, because we're better together. We grow, we can learn and share our faith together.
That's very true. And I think along the same lines of stations, I know I offer this for our youth ministry, and I'm sure maybe different religious ed classes and stuff offer it, but even watching The Passion of the Christ, Mel Gibson's Passion, you said how
powerful.
the stations, it's basically like praying the stations just with the visual aid helping you. It's a very powerful movie, so I would recommend that to listeners. If I come across people that still haven't watched it. It came out in I think 2004, somewhere around there, and there's still people that say, I never saw that. I'm like, you never saw it.
I think people are fearful of it. I mean, it's a very powerful movie, and I remember my wife and I saw it in the theaters when it came out, and I remember looking over and watching her crying because it was so so difficult to watch because
Sure.
Mel Gibson did a great job of really capturing, well, the passion, the pain, the anguish that Jesus was going through. And I think that sometimes for some people it can be too much, but I still recommend that they sort of gird up and watch it because it really will touch you. And it puts, it's rare that we can actually understand what Jesus went through. And you can't help but understand, at least the physical torment of what he went through.
Father, have you seen that?
I have many times.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you would agree.
It was powerful, especially the first time seeing it in the theaters. I was in seminary. We went as a group, all the seminarians. It was amazing.
Yeah.
Really.
Yeah, it always touches our
to
heart.
consider how much Christ went through for us.
Sure.
Out of love.
Yeah. So we're getting ready for Ash Wednesday. I know when they listen to this, it probably have passed, right?
Yeah, when people listen to this, it'll be the first Monday in Lent.
Yeah, so happy Lent, everybody, because we're in it. But with the start of Ash Wednesday, I always reflect about the ashes on our forehead and going out to others and basically saying, we are sinners. Like, I know I'm a sinner. I recognize that. Can you give us any thoughts or priestly words on recommendations and how we really have to be humble during this whole Lenten season, how Lent really humbles us? And I think it starts with that Ash Wednesday and goes throughout the entire 40 days of Lent.
Well, Ash Wednesday originally started in the ancient church as the order of penitence. In the early church, the bishop used to hear public confessions in front of the entire congregation and then impose a penance and put ashes on someone's head, and they would be absolved on Holy Thursday. But then later in church history, confession became private, and people still like that symbol of the ashes, and it was expanded to everyone in the church who wanted to receive it. So that's why in the Roman church we have something special. We celebrate Ash Wednesday. Many of the Eastern Catholic churches, they don't begin Lent until the first Sunday of Lent.
Okay.
But the ashes are a powerful symbol when you think about it, because it's coming to us right from the book of Genesis. When I just did a funeral today, and one of the prayers for final commendation is you say, we remember that we are dust, and unto dust we shall return. And that's really the prayer that we say at the funeral, but it reflects back to Genesis, that God formed us out of the dirt of the ground, but he breathed life into us. It's very humbling to think about that. It's humbling to think of our roots, where we came from, and the reason that we have life in us is God. And each human being is created in the image and likeness of God, but sometimes we mar or we disfigure that image by our sin. So I think the ashes are a powerful symbol to get us back and grounded into the truth of our identity. Humble us, but also get us to realize our true dignity comes from God. God breathing into us, giving us life, giving us a relationship, choosing us, really calling us to be alive. And it's really a powerful symbol of death, but also of resurrection, because God one day will rise us from the dead, as he did Christ.
Yeah. Wow, that's so beautiful.
And it's just to sort of tag on what you were saying, is Lent is one of those times of the year when we're reminded it's a great death in itself is a great equalizer, that no matter where we are, what our station in life, if you believe in stations of life, at some point we're all going to die, and we're all going to meet our maker in the exact same way. It doesn't matter how much money we had, it doesn't matter how many friends we have. This is something we all need to focus on. And it's very easy for us who have busy lives and a lot going on and things that we think are important to protect, to have that moment of where we just sit back and go, okay, let's strip all of that away. Much like what happened to Christ during Holy Week. We need to strip all that away, and this is what we are. This is all we are. Forget about all that other stuff, which I think is easy to forget, you know, and particularly in a time when there's so much stuff going on to distract us, like Netflix or or baseball seasons gearing up, or our kids and the spring play going on, or baseball, Little League baseball starting, all that kind of stuff. It's so easy to be distracted, and Lent is this great gift to focus us back again on our spirituality. Yeah, I feel like so much comes out of Lent. Like, I actually look forward to it every year. I get excited. A lot of people are like, oh no, it's Lent. I was just on a retreat this weekend, and I was like, guys, all the fun stuff in the church happens.
Right,
I know. Honestly,
I live for Holy Week. Personally, I love Holy Week. But in saying Ash Wednesday was coming up to at least my ministry that I had this retreat this weekend, they were like, what? No, like dreading it. And I'm like, guys, this is the best part of our church calendar. This is great. This is what it's all about.
Did you remind them that they do get Mardi Gras before Ash Wednesday starts? Everybody gets eat, drink, and be merry the day before.
Little Fat Tuesday coming up.
Exactly. And then, yes, back on Ash Wednesday. But think about it. When you think, like, a lot of my childhood favorite memories took place during Lent. And I know it sounds weird because we're talking about what a somber time it is, but everybody loved getting their ashes. While it may not have been the most fun thing to do, I still remember clearly my first confession when I was a kid, and every confession I ever went to in school, and trying to figure out
every confession. You remember every confession? Wow.
I was there a lot, but
I try to forget every confession.
No, they're there. But like anyway, but I remember him clearly, and I remember, being in school and like, okay, well, which priest because there'd always be like 7 priests there, and like, all right, I got to get in that line because I know that priest. I got to go to this priest over here. He's mean. He gives the worst, penances. But those were like, I have fond memories of those times, and the same way I have fond memories of things that we were talking about, things we can do like adoration. Parishes in the past, and I don't know if you'll be doing it in our parish this year, Father, but we would do like 40 hours, and I would always volunteer to be there like 2 a.m., 3 a.m., 4 a.m. And they've always been the most powerful spiritual moments, meditating wise anyway, spiritual moments for me, where I was just, it's so quiet and it's so warm, well, slightly cold, and dark. And I'm at that time, there was no separation between me and Christ. And it was like, those times have never appeared in anything else, but they're incredibly powerful. And that's not to assume that'll be powerful for everybody, but this is the time of year when we get these opportunities.
Yeah,
definitely.
How have you, as a priest, Father, have you seen people's reaction to? Well, I always, let's start with Ash Wednesday again, because it really always amazes me working in the church how everyone comes out for Ash Wednesday. Like, everyone loves their ashes, no matter if they're a Sunday Catholic every Sunday, or if they're just maybe on the periphery of being a Catholic and just kind of checking off a few boxes. But they people love to get ashes. So in Lent, starting with Ash Wednesday going forward, how is it as you a priest, just seeing people's reaction to this time of year?
Well, I think Ash Wednesday is definitely a real day for evangelization. Some people might not go to church throughout the year on Sunday, but they know they have to go for Ash Wednesday. And it's not even a holy day of obligation.
It's not. It cracks me up.
But they love that symbol for some reason. They love also getting the palms on Palm Sunday, which are burnt and then used for ashes the following year. So
there's a connection.
It's an interesting connection. I'm not sure what the mystery is to that, but it is good that when people are there, we have to make the most of it. We have to challenge them and tell them the truth of the gospel. I think the gospel on Ash Wednesday is so powerful because Jesus is saying in that gospel, he's talking to the Pharisees of his day, and he's saying, it's not just about externals. Don't just go onto the street corner to pray. Let everyone see that you're praying. Go to your inner room and pray. Don't blow your trumpet when you're giving alms or giving fasting, to the poor, or when you're fasting. Don't skew your fists, which I think is kind of ironic because we put ashes on our heads
I know.
when we go to fast. But I think we have to be joyful when we're fasting. I think that's what Christ is telling us, not to be real miserable. There's that expression, hangry.
Yes.
People get hunger and angry together.
Yeah.
And that's a shame. That happens to some people when they're fasting on Ash Wednesday and Good Friday. But we don't want to fall into that trap. We want to focus on when we give up, we do that joyfully. We keep it private. I don't like to share, for example, too much of what I'm giving up for Lent. When I was in Catholic grade school, the sisters always told, that's personal, that's a secret, don't tell other people, that's between you and God.
That's good advice.
And God rewards you for that. You know, when you keep that between you and God, and you go to your inner room and you pray, and you don't have to make a big show, but Christ is always looking at our hearts. What's going on inside of us? That's where the transformation, the change should be happening. And the best Lent is if we can challenge ourselves, and if I can challenge people who come on Ash Wednesday to consider that it's not just that external of the ashes on our foreheads, but what's going on inside our hearts. Are we giving our hearts more to God? Are we loving others in our lives more and more? that's the true challenge.
Yeah, that's really great advice for everybody, for sure.
I'm curious, in your own priesthood, you don't have to tell me what you're giving up for Lent, but like, what do you do to sort of spiritually prepare and spiritually live through Lent? I mean, I know what lay people do as a general rule. We're fighting our whims to go binge watch Netflix or something. But what about you? How do you handle the preparation of Lent?
I think a good Lent is one that you think through and you have a plan for. Some people, they hold off, they don't know what they're going to give up, and they wait, and then they end up doing nothing. But I think even now, before Ash Wednesday, we're here on Monday before Ash Wednesday, I'm already starting to think, what am I going to do to make the most of Lent? And I think if you don't have a plan, it doesn't happen. Yeah. If you don't put time on your schedule for God, it's not going to happen. Sometimes people think of whatever leftover time I have, I'll give that to God. But if you make God the priority, number one, and all the other events in your schedule are around that, that's going to be a great Lent.
Yeah.
So I think that's what I try to challenge myself when I get up in the morning and think about what's coming up in the week ahead, the month ahead, the 40 days of Lent. I really want to plan well. And even I think it's a good rule of thumb when going into confession. There's so many people that go online for confession during the season, and some people aren't well prepared. I think it's good to take an inventory of your life, make a good examination of conscience, be well prepared. Think about, what have you done since your last confession? What do you need to bring to God for healing? I think all of that is key. Just being thoughtful, being conscious of what we're entering into.
Yeah, that is true. And that really goes for anything in life, being prepared, but especially in the spiritual life. I mean, we're talking about our souls here at stake, so we would really want to be prepared and to go deeper and to get the most out of it. That makes total sense. Sure.
Otherwise, we just stay on the surface. It's all superficial. We're checking off things, but it doesn't make an impact on the heart. Yeah.
I'm curious, Father. Confession for a lot of people, even for longtime Catholics, can be very frightening. And I have a hard time personally, I have a hard time explaining and encouraging people to go to confession. I mean, don't get me wrong, I encourage everyone to go to confession, but I have very little success in encouraging people to go to confession. For those who might be still frightful about that, like, how can you encourage them? How can I encourage them to go to confession?
I think people have to just go in with courage and know that the priest is there as God's representative to offer them reconciliation, to offer them a new beginning, encourage them. We're there not to put you down or judge you or anything like that, but to encourage you and help you to receive God's mercy. And I'll tell you, when I listen to confessions, I'm not thinking, oh, this person is so horrible or bad. I'm thinking, wow, what a great thing that this person is able to own up to the sinfulness in their life. The Holy Spirit led them here, and they're making this courageous choice to name their sins to another human being, to come before God and say, God, I can't do this on my own. I need you to be my Savior. And they just open their hearts. It's moving. It's powerful. It's very humbling for me to be there listening to confessions and offering that absolution and being that instrument to be able to see someone begin a new life. And I think that should be enough reason for people to have joy about the sacrament. What a great gift it is that Christ gave us. And to actually hear the words, I absolve you. We don't have to guess. We don't have to wonder. We know that no sin is too big. You should never hold anything back. You should be completely honest. The priest can never repeat what he hears in confession. And he's just there as God's representative to tell you you're forgiven. So why be afraid? God knows everything about you already. Yeah. So we're not fooling anyone but ourselves if we hold something back.
That is true. Yeah. Very true.
That's probably the best explanation I've ever heard, actually.
Great. I can't wait to keep listening to this. Now, anytime we forget it, we just play this podcast back to...
Well, that's what it's funny. I tell people, not necessarily related to confession, but when they're having troubles with something, that it's a sign of courage on their part to come forward, and hadn't never thought of that in the confessional, but that's really true.
And I always think too, the graces that come from it. What do you got to lose? You got graces to gain. So, go, and you're going to feel so much better. again, working in youth ministry, I see the youth come out, and I always say, "You're glowing. You're like a little saint right now," and they get even happier then because they're already. I mean, you could see it in their whole face. Their whole demeanor has changed after leaving confessions, and then you say that, and you just pump them up more. But they realize, there's something different here. There's an extra joy that was not present before in my life, and now is, because this weight of sin has been removed, which goes back to what Lent is all about Jesus dying on the cross for our sins and giving us that hope of heaven, which we're able to obtain by getting mortal sin off of our souls.
And some of the scriptures language talking about the way God forgives is powerful too. As far as the east is from the west, infinite distance, God forgives that sin. Mm-hmm. And God, who's all-knowing, it says, we as human beings, we can forgive, but we don't forget. But God, who knows all things, chooses to forget the sin.
Yeah.
And that's how merciful and powerful our God is.
Yeah.
And that some people, it's been a long time since they've been to confession, and I think it makes them even more nervous to go. One of our other Talking Catholic YouTube hosts, Donna Ottaviano Brent, she's talked about this publicly, and so I'll name check her in this. That there was a 30-year break at one point in her life between confessions, and she looks back on that 30 years and she goes, "What was I thinking?" It's like, why didn't I avail myself of this so many years ago? But I think it's over like the last 8 or 10 years she's been going regularly, and she's a changed woman because of it. It's sort of brought her back on a path to a stronger spiritual nature, and she's so very happy about it. Now she's one of our greatest advocates as for the Catholic
like
faith.
St. Paul, that major conversion and what it does, and then what God is able to do with that person because their openness to the Lord and their freedom from sin.
Sure.
Yeah. So is there a pattern to the first to these 7 weeks? During Advent we talk about how the first couple of weeks are actually quite grim of Advent, and
then
you
get the pink candle.
and you get the pink candle, and everything sort of lightens up again. Does Lent have that sort of a process as well?
Actually, it's interesting if you look into the lectionary. In the Catholic Church we have a 3-year lectionary, so we have many different readings and variety of readings in the 3 years of the Church. But this year we're in year A, which is a special year for Lent. These go back to the most ancient readings that were used in the Roman Church, and it's really about purification and enlightenment that comes to us through Christ. Always on the first Sunday of Lent, you'll hear Christ's temptation by the devil, and you'll hear different versions of that on the first Sunday of Lent, depending on what year we're in. But in year A of the lectionary, which we're in this year, we're going to be going through listening to stories about Jesus' transfiguration. And that's teaching us that Christ is 100% God, 100% man, and his divinity is shining forth. And this was an important thing to remember before Christ went into his suffering, to keep in perspective who he actually is. And it shows a little glimmer of the resurrection that's coming. Then we go forward, and we're going to hear stories about Jesus' interactions with different people that he healed, dramatic, life-changing experiences. For example, Jesus' encounter with the woman at the well, the Samaritan woman, and how he dialogues with her. He challenges her. He knows about her life, and she has that conversation with him. And she becomes a disciple and starts telling everyone in this town that I met the Messiah. It's really a great story of someone coming to faith. No matter how broken they are, they can encounter Jesus, turn their life around, and bring others to Christ. Or I think it's the fourth Sunday of Lent. It's one of my favorites. It's the story of the man born blind.
Oh, right, yeah.
And he comes across Jesus, and Christ prays over him, and all of a sudden he can see, and people are baffled by this. They blamed his parents. They said because his parents were sinners, he was born blind, and it's their fault. And he says, I don't know how this happened. It's like a quote in the scripture. He says, all I know is I was blind and now I see. Mm-hmm. And he's telling the Pharisees and the Sadducees, all these people who are questioning him. But it's just enlightening. It's telling us that when you encounter Christ, it puts your life in a new direction. Mm-hmm. And see, the readings in Lent were getting the catechumens, the people who were getting ready to become full members of the church. They get baptized, confirmed, and First Holy Communion on Easter. The catechumens,
the scrutiny masses,
the scrutinies, right? Mm-hmm. They were hearing these gospels to tell them about who this man, Christ Jesus, actually is. what he does when you encounter him, and he changes your life, puts your life in a new direction. And this was like a challenge to the early church, as it is for us today, to take that to heart and say, this is how my relationship with Christ is going, and this is how he enlightens me, how he purifies me, sends me on a mission into the world. And then we go forward, we hear about the raising of Lazarus, we hear about Palm Sunday, and things kind of intensify as we get into Holy Week and the Passion of Christ. But I think those interactions, those stories that we hear are so powerful to point us to that basic question that the challenge is to have that relationship with Jesus Christ.
Wow.
Yeah.
That was great. I didn't realize all of that. I knew some aspects of it, but wow, that was really great explanation of how these readings build.
Yeah, it's fascinating when you look into all the history and how this was used from the early church to today.
Yeah.
And which is one of the reasons why we like to have these podcasts, is because it's so easy for us in this day and age to just sort of accept everything as rote. But and actually this was part of your homily for this past weekend was really, and see, I listened to the homily, that you have to take everything in context to really understand, and to understand our faith. And sometimes that context changes. Well, the original context doesn't change, but our perspective changes over time, and we may not remember we may not fully understand why things were said that they were the way, like in your case, turning the other cheek. You talked about in the homily this week. I'm so proud that I'm actually remembering this. I am too.
I was going to say, so is your pastor.
It's good. It's a good sign. I can tell you, I don't always remember the homilies. So I remember that one. But no, it is important that we really understand more about Lent and all the aspects of our faith than just accepting it as Sunday Mass. And Lent oftentimes gets reduced to getting your ashes on Ash Wednesday, remembering to give up whatever you gave up during the week, remembering that you can't have meat on Fridays, and as my mother often says, Mike, chickens do not swim. You cannot have chicken nuggets on which was a big problem for my growing up.
Is poultry cow? I'm like, yeah, that's meat.
That's right. Yeah, it doesn't. But my teenager brain never was able to get a hold of that. And then palms at the end of for Palm Sunday. But it's so much richer, and there's so much more. That's such a great opportunity to really avail yourself. And I will admit that I have been, if there's any success, it's that in Lent I actually do. While I think it pales probably in comparison to what Kari does, and certainly what you do, Father, that is when I find myself drawn back to the faith, just sort of supernaturally. And a lot of that has to do with my very good wife, who's always making sure that we make it. You will find us at soup and stations, I promise you, and not just because I love the soup, but they really are these great opportunities that I hope people will take advantage of.
Definitely, it's a grace-filled time.
Yeah,
it's really
amazing. Truly is. Yeah.
Kari, what do you try to do during Lent?
Every year is a little different for me. Like I said, I live for Holy Week. I love Holy Week, but during the actual Lent itself. So I actually wanted to ask Father this. So I always understood it as the actual 40 days of Lent do not include Sundays, because Sundays are it's a feast day every Sunday. Right. Mm-hmm. So I do something that is within reason, but on Sundays I reprieve from that fast. I remove from that fast and actually enjoy it on Sundays. So for me, the whole Lent itself makes it very exciting, because I'm like, okay, I'm going to go hard, but then I still remember Sunday is like an important, remove from your fast day, because the bridegroom is present. Right? It's Sunday. Sure. So, one year I did Chick-fil-A though, and they're closed on Sundays. So that was a year that was extra difficult. So for me, I usually, I know, right? Of course. Well,
Father told you planning is important as part of Lent. Never forget that.
I usually try to do something that I do enjoy and love and give that up. So for me, Chick-fil-A was one of those. But then I always tried to add something in addition. So something that I started a while back and I continue to do is I work at a church, and we have a perpetual adoration chapel here, as long as you have the key fob, which I do because I work here, and if you want one, you do. And yet I fail to stop in there as often as I should. Mm-hmm. And so something I did is before leaving work, because usually I never get here early, is stop in the chapel and pray for an extra 10 minutes before the Lord. And that has been very, very fruitful and really a big part of my transformation during Lent to really deepen my faith. So doing that. So I tend to try to do kind of along that mindset, give something up and do something more. And it ties into the prayer, right? You said we have those 3 tiers that were based off of the prayer, fasting, and also almsgiving. So so that for me is a really big thing. I try to fast a little bit more. Like sometimes even if I give up, say, all sweets, I'll often deny myself something else. Maybe I like to, just along the way, I let the promptings of the Holy Spirit also kind of take place, not just like, okay, well, I know I gave up cookies and cake or whatever, but, I really want to drink this. Ginger ale is a treat for me. Sometimes I usually drink water with most of my meals. I really want to drink this ginger ale right now, but I'm not going to do it. So I let the Holy Spirit guide it a little bit more too. I have to say, you really put me into place when you said think a little bit more about it, because it really crept up on me. I had my trip, and then we had a really large retreat this past weekend, and my mind has just been consumed between those 2 things in the last 3-4 weeks. And I even sang it to them. We have Lent this one, starts this Wednesday, Ash Wednesday, and I thought I gotta really sit down and buckle in and think of what I'm gonna do, because I have not thought of it yet. I sound like you, Mike. This is usually you saying this stuff.
I'm the bad
Role
Catholic
reversal
in the group.
right here.
So weird.
But I will say the Stations of the Cross is something that I never had regularly as part of my Fridays in Lent. And I sat and thought about it the other day, and I said, why? Because I was preparing. Again, my ministries really helped my faith a lot, because we do a living stations with the youth group, and I was talking about it and saying we're going to be taking sign up soon. This is coming up for Good Friday. We're going to have some rehearsals. And I thought, I don't pray stations other than this living station, so maybe I should do that. So maybe that's it. Maybe right now I just answered my question, is I got to pray the stations more, because it's so great.
The power of the podcast.
The power of the podcast.
We talk through our things. Father is absolutely right, and I've always been a firm believer in you're not really supposed to make a big deal out of your sacrifices, even to the point of I've never really. It's always been difficult for me to sort of come to grips with even the ashes on my forehead. Like, do I keep them on all day? Do I wipe them off? Like, it's always been a quandary, because I overthink everything. It's always been a quandary for me. And 9 times out of 10 I leave them on, but I don't think I've ever actually wiped them off, but I've had the debate. But as we were talking here, sort of in line with what you were saying, doing something more. Just the other day, I was thinking about Lent ahead of time, and
bravo,
the rarity, Kari, I assure you. And I realized, I work. This is actually going to come out making me look bad. I work next to the cathedral. The cathedral is literally across the alleyway from my apartment. From my apartment, but from my office, I look out at the cathedral every day from my window, and I never go to 12:05 Mass, because I'm usually knee deep in work.
Probably.
Yeah, right, exactly. Fixing people's videos and stuff like that. Just teasing. It's an inside joke. My goal this year is to go to 12:05 Mass every day for daily Mass.
That's awesome.
As well as giving up whatever I'm going to give up, and Father's absolutely right. I'm not making a big deal out of it. It's like keeping that stuff close to my heart. So I'm talking on the podcast about it now, but I'm not going to talk about it later. And I hope people will take it. And you and I are in unique situations, Kari, in the sense that, and Father's, of course, the same. We work for the church, so we have access to daily Mass very easily, or whatever the spiritual entity is, the chapel.
And daily Mass as well.
But the truth of the matter is, it's not that hard to find some place to go. When I was working in Center City, Philadelphia, it was a 5-minute walk to the cathedral, and I could have gone to noon Mass at any time, and I simply was lazy about it and didn't go. You don't have to be across an alleyway to do something. All right, I guarantee you somewhere in the diocese is a 6:30 a.m. Mass if you want to do a daily Mass somewhere. Maybe it's not
There's
convenient.
even evening Masses too.
Right. Evening Masses, anything. So, and it should be, like we were talking, it ought to hurt a little bit. It should be a little bit difficult. You should get a 5-minute walk, or you have to give up your lunch, or you have to do something to make this worthwhile, because that's really what the Lent is. And not so much the sacrifice of it, but reminding ourselves of the pain that and the end of days eventually.
Well, Kari mentioned one of my favorite Blessed Pier Giorgio Frassati. And one of the things I loved about his life is he would go to Mass in the morning. He would pray the rosary on the train. But he said on Friday, I repay the favor. Christ has visited me in Holy Communion. I'm going to repay that favor by visiting him in the poor and the sick. And he would spend Fridays going around visiting the hospital, visiting those people who were hurting and needed, they were lonely, and they just needed someone to be there. And at his funeral, so many people, just the poor, the sick, all the people from Turin came to that funeral. The family was shocked because he did all that very low key.
No one knew.
No one knew all the good that he was doing, but he saw Christ in the poor. So I think Mike made a good point about giving. I think reaching out to people who might be all alone. A phone call goes a long way. Maybe visiting even a relative or elderly person. That could be a Lenten way of giving.
It's a work of mercy too.
Yeah. And to really plan that too. Like as we schedule our prayer, schedule our visits to the poor, to the sick, to the homebound. I think that's so key to encountering Christ in this season as well.
Well, Father John, this was a great episode. This is wonderful. It's actually one of the most educational ones we've had in a long time. So Father John Rossi of Saint Bridget's Parish in Glassboro, New Jersey. And thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you,
Mike. Thank you, Kari.
God bless everyone.
Thank you for making
it
happen. God bless everybody.